Playing a good drum roll requires you to balance and find the perfect ratio between three really important components. I'm going to break those three components down in this very lesson, so you want to make sure you watch the whole thing. If you already have a good roll, well, after you watch this lesson, it's going to be even better, trust me. And if your roll is mediocre at best, your roll is really going to improve, because I'm going to break this thing down to the ground. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Are you ready? Are you really ready? Because last time you were like, I don't know, Q. I don't know if I'm ready. So are you really ready? Well, then let's go then. All right, so in this lesson, as the title implies, I'm going to show you how to play a drum roll on the snare drum. A great drum roll on the snare drum. The first component that I'm going to talk about is the firmness or the looseness at which you hold the sticks. Your grip, firmness, or looseness. It's so important. So we go from loose. And notice what I'm doing. I'm overlapping. I'm overlapping the bounces, which is kind of the idea of playing, of what it means to play a good roll. Your hands have to overlap one another. If they don't, then you get holes in your roll. So even at this slow, super slow tempo and rate, I'm practicing that. This is something that you should practice. I'm surprised at how many drummers struggle with this, which means, usually it means that they're getting in the way of the stick. They're not allowing the stick to do what it naturally wants to do, which is what? Bounce. So practice that. So we go from an extreme looseness, right? I probably won't ever have to hold the stick that loose to produce a good roll. However, it's a good technique to work on. Now, if we just kind of increase the firmness as we go, the notes become more compressed, right? So we're getting a little firmer. Now I'm really pressing. That's where that word comes from, the idea of a press roll. You start to press, to compress the notes, to create what? A buzz, that buzz sound. However, sometimes when drummers think about a buzz roll, they only buzz. And they never, at any point in the roll, allow the stick to actually, or they never allow their hands to relax, right? And depending on this next component, hey, that was a good segue. This next component is going to determine the firmness or looseness that you hold the sticks. The next component is the rate at which your hands move. Slower rates require more bounces. Faster rates require fewer bounces. And that's per stick. And I'll show you what I mean, because it may sound a little confusing. Let's say we're moving at this rate, right? When I say rate, I'm thinking about 16th notes, 8th note triplets, 16th note triplets. And you'll see what I mean. So let's give ourselves a tempo. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So that's our rate, right? Now I'm going to buzz each note and see what we got at a medium looseness. Ready? And a medium firmness, I should say. Sounds pretty choppy, right? And it's not because I'm doing anything wrong necessarily. I'm just not adjusting my looseness of my hand. So now that was too firm for that rate. Same rate, but now I'm going to allow my hands to relax a little bit more so that I can produce more notes, more bounces per stick. Ready, and so we go from this. I'm too firm. Now I'm going to relax. Do you hear the difference? Suddenly, the rates at which my hands are moving becomes a little less obvious, right? Now, you might be thinking, hey, that doesn't sound like a great roll. We're working on it. Remember, there's 3 components. Aha! If we play a faster rate, remember what I said? It requires fewer notes to fill up the sound of the roll. So, if we're playing 1 ienda, 2 ienda, 3 ienda, 4 ienda, right? So I found the balance of what that rate requires as far as the grip goes, as far as the firmness or the looseness. I found it by the end. And this is something you have to practice. You have to figure out, okay, if my hands are moving at this tempo, then my hands need to be this firm or this loose. And once you get aware of that, once you practice that at different rates, you start to do it automatically, right? So if I play, I'm not going to go, right? And I'm also not going to go, I'm going to go. And that firmness will not work at this tempo, at this rate. See how that sounds choppy? So I adjust the firmness or the looseness. Aha. And that leads me to probably the most important component of a roll. The dynamics at which you play your roll, at which you wish to play your roll, will determine the rate at which your hands need to move, which determines what? The looseness or firmness that you hold the sticks. Yes, they're all connected. That's why it's so important to be aware of these 3 components, and they go together. Okay? So I'll explain what I mean. Back to our roll. So this is where we were. If I want to play a crescendo, I didn't adjust anything except for the dynamics. And you see how choppy it sounds? If I want to play a crescendo, my hands need to gradually what? Speed up, right? And it will start to sound a lot fuller and require my hands to move faster, therefore produce fewer bounces, right? So I start to compress the notes. So let's see so without the buzzes, this is what it would sound like, right? Or I'll end on the right hand. See how I'm speeding up? Let's see what that sounds like if I buzz with the right firmness per dynamic. You see? I'm starting slow and relaxed and loose right here. I'm not moving faster than I need to move for that dynamic. And my hands speed up my firmness adjusts and gets a little firmer, but not too firm, and the dynamic opens up. If I want decrescendo, woo, ooh, right? Oh, it's so cool how all of these components really talk to each other and really determine how good your roll sounds. So that is the lesson. That is the lesson on how to play a roll on the snare drum. A great roll on the snare drum. And there's so many different things you have to kind of practice and be aware that go into making a roll sound good at different dynamics. Remember, think dynamically. If you think dynamics first, okay, you got your dynamic. Now you got to figure out what rates your hands need to move depending on the dynamic that you want to play. And that's going to determine the firmness or the looseness of your hands. Super important to think about all those three together, not separately, okay? So practice your rolls, and I want to hear them. I want to hear some good rolls coming out of your comments. Wait, you can't really. Well, you get the idea. Tell me how your roll practicing is going. Not role playing, not Tootsie Roll, not leading roll, not Rolls Royce. I'm talking about snare drum rolls, okay? So practice hard, but practice smart. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Peace.